in this area that's going to be looking to put up a monument to this regiment. So I'd like him to tell you a little bit about this project. I think you'll find it interesting.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm glad to see that you took advantage of the pamphlets up there. I'm hoping that my niece will get here before I leave, or at least get here before the program ends. She has our new brochure. It's similar to that, but it has our new email address in it. So let's keep our fingers crossed she's going to get here with that. It is an honor for me to be here with Mr. Johnson and to start off the program. And he's going to be in uniform to do his thing. And what I am here to talk about is the descendants of the men of America 29. Give you just a little brief history about them and us and what we do. The regiment was formed up here in New Haven back in 1863 by executive order of then Governor William Buckingham, who was a Republican. This regiment was formed. It had opposition from the Democratic Party. Members of the Democratic Party felt that giving 1,000 men guns here in the state of Connecticut, they would go crazy killing white men to abduct white women and rape them. They came up with all kinds of stories. They'd be in drunken rages and all this kind of stuff. Well, Governor Buckingham and some other good-thinking people, after yawning a couple of times, decided, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And the plans for organizing the regiment went ahead. A legitimate question is, where did Buckingham get the idea to bring before the state legislature the forming of our own regiment? What had happened was that he was visiting in Boston, Massachusetts, and he heard about the abolitionist movement going on, and he was a staunch supporter of Abraham Lincoln, and he was also a staunch supporter to the anti-slavery movement. So he was meeting up there in Massachusetts, in Boston, and it came to his attention that the 54th, which had formed up, was on the Commons drilling. So he went out there to introduce himself, and he wanted to see the regiment. So as he was walking through the regiment, he was introducing himself and shaking hands, and came up to some people and said, "Hi, I'm Buckingham from Massachusetts. Where are you from?" New Haven, Connecticut. Came down the line and shook hands. "Where are you from?" Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he started thinking, you know, everywhere he went, somebody was from Waterbury, somebody was from Ansonia. And he got on the train, he was coming home, and he decided, we got to stop this. If we've got that much enthusiasm in Connecticut of men of color who want to fight in this great campaign, we need to have our own regiment. So armed with that information and facts, he brought that to the Secretary of War, Stanton. He brought that to his attention, and to the state legislature, that we could have our own regiment. So it was formed. New Haven was selected for one reason and one reason only. It was a central transportation hub, major railroad station and connections, and a seagoing deep water harbor. So New Haven was selected as the point of rendezvous. The location for the rendezvous was then a place called, today we call it, what's the name of the park? Chris Kohler Park. I've been doing this so long I forgot the name of the park. Chris Kohler Park, but back then it was called Grapevine Point. And for obvious reasons, if you were here in 1862-63, it was wild Concord grapes grew out there just by hundreds of thousands. So they selected that park area to form the regiment. They changed the name from Grapevine Point to Camp Terry, capital T-E-R-R-Y, is what the camp got known by. The men formed up, and the recruiting was so successful, they formed the 30th. That regiment did not stay in Connecticut. The state of New York decided to form its own regiment of men of color. They petitioned the state of Connecticut, and Buckingham said fine. He assigned the 30th over to New York, and they became the New York 7th. In January of 1864, the regiment got its orders to move south. They marched down Chapel Street, and when they got to the New Haven Green, the colored women of Vera Church presented them with their battle flag. We have a reproduction of the actual flag. That flag was given then to Colonel Wooster. Wooster Street was not named after Colonel Wooster. It just so happened that that was his last name. Colonel Wooster then turned and gave that to a master sergeant. The troop then marched out, boarded ship, and sailed to Annapolis, Maryland. And from Annapolis, Maryland, they engaged in a series of 3 battles, mainly in Virginia and North Carolina. And then from North Carolina, when the war ended on them, they were moved and shipped to Texas. There was a rumor that members and units of the Confederacy were going to hook up with the Mexican government and the army of the Mexican government to retake Texas. So this regiment, the 29th, was moved to Texas to be in the front line to blunt that offensive action. It never happened. And when it became obvious that that was nothing more than hysteria, the regiment was brought home by boat here in New Haven. They disembarked, boarded the train, went to Hartford, Connecticut for part of a great parade, and there the men were honorably discharged. Our organization, called the Descendants of the Connecticut 29th Regiment Incorporated, we're a 501c nonprofit corporation incorporated here in Connecticut. We were formed to bring some rebirth to the memory of these men. Quite frankly, we ran into people who had no idea that there was a colored regiment from Connecticut, or the war, the fact that they fought in the war and where. They're the first organized regular army that moved the enemy. Colonel Wooster wasn't too happy about this, because he told the guys, you could get shot in your derriere and you wouldn't be no good for anybody. But what happened was, by that time, there was a massacre in Tennessee called Fort Pillow. What happened was that there was a regiment of colored troops that attempted to surrender with their white officers, because they didn't have enough ammunition and they were fighting Forster. They attempted to surrender. They reversed their weapons. That was the sign of surrender. You reverse your rifle and waved in the sky a white flag. Well, the Confederacy decided they weren't going to take any nigger prisoners, and they killed all of them. The colored troops, therefore, throughout the war, had a battle cry, and that battle cry was, "Remember Fort Pillow." Remember Fort Pillow. So when they went up against the Confederacy in Virginia, that was the battle cry of Company A, B, and C that met General Lee's offensive action, who was attempting to outflank Grant. The 29th blocked that, and their battle cry was to remember Fort Pillow. The response from the Confederate side was, we weren't there. The response back from the 29th was, your uniform was there. In the battle, they won that battle. My great-great-grandfather, Samuel Sills, and his brother Robert, enlisted from New Haven. And I had 2 other great-great-uncles from Connecticut, the Ficklin brothers, who enlisted, so we had 4. That's my sister. There's a bunch of my descendants here with me. You guys please stand up. There's Carol Pollard, our first president, Nanny Gomez, and Adeline Tucker, and her gorgeous daughter standing right there. And Maxine, all of them ancestors. What's due these men is recognition. So if you look at the back of the pamphlet, you see an artist's rendition, an architectural drawing of what the monument's going to look like. The artist we have engaged in making the monument is the same gentleman who did the Armor Star statue that's downtown New Haven in front of City Hall. That's Mr. Ed Hamilton out of Kansas. He's doing our master design, which is going to be a large plaque that's going to be on the monolith that shows the men with their 2 flags. The flag given to them by the colored women of Vera Church, and their battle flag of the Union that they carried into battle. in the Hall of Flags at our state capitol, the battle flag is not on display because of the condition that it's in. Bullet holes and just wear and tear over the years have made it all virtually. Oh, here's Jackie, my niece Jackie got the new forms. So we made a reproduction of it, and we were very, very lucky to find a reproduction company that had an actual photograph of what the flag was, and all these dimensions and what it was made of. So we had an actual flag made, and we're very proud of it. We, like Mr. Jackson, we go around the state and we give lectures on the 29th. Tomorrow I'm going to be in Stamford, Connecticut, at Westover Middle School, and be talking to the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders all day tomorrow on the regiment. Gee, what else can I tell you? We hope to have this dedication this September here in New Haven, and we're going to have a big party. This is going to be a state party, because these men came from all over Connecticut. This is not a New Haven thing. This is a Connecticut thing. This belongs to every Connecticut citizen. Every school child needs to know who these men were. These men were African American, they were Caucasian, and they were Native American. And part of my blood is Native American. We come from the Golden Hill Progressive, Pequot. We come from the Housatonic, which at that time was still prevalent in East Haven. But they came from a number, and the Mohicans. So we had a great time, and the dedication will be advertised and proclaimed. We got to sell something. And our selling point is this: you do not have to be a descendant to be a member of our organization. You don't have to be African American to be a member. A number of our members are Caucasian. We've made this decision because the regiment itself was multicolored. And it didn't make sense to us to perpetuate racism or discrimination in any form. So if there's, my niece, when she hands out the new pamphlets, has my email address, but it has my home phone and our fax on it. So if you're interested in becoming a member, just let me know, and I'll be very happy to send you an application. We meet once a month. We meet here in New Haven. We had a group up in Hartford, but we lost our secretary. He moved to Florida, bless his soul. So now we're going to be recruiting other members to take his place. That's what we try to do, is if you are from Hartford, it's not fair for you to come to New Haven all the time. We owe it to you to come to your town. If you're from Bridgeport, if you're from Ansonia, wherever, we like to move around so everyone can get to see all of us, and we can get to see your community and get to know it better. So without further ado, I'm finished with my speech,